On this episode of Just Informed Talk, I sit down with an anonymous source I've had for over 4 years who's finally decided to go public. He claims to be a United States Air Force intelligence asset formerly, and he wants to talk about the worst case scenario for the 2020 election, what we need to do to prepare for the war games that were put out by John Podesta, where they discussed Joe Biden not conceding in defeat, and the possibility of Oregon, Washington, and California seceding from the Union. What does that mean for the people in those states? What does that mean for you? How do you prepare? We're going to talk about that plus a whole lot more, so you guys are going to want to stick around and check it out. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Just Informed Talk. I'm here with my good friend, Chris, we'll call him for now. He's got a very interesting background, and he's here to help tell you guys about some important information that we need to really have a discussion about here before this election. And his background, from what I can gather, is basically former U.S. Air Force intelligence asset, and he's going to kind of give you the full rundown on his background. And we're going to share some important information here today. So welcome to the show, Chris.
Hey, how you doing today? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing very well. Okay, so let's start here. Really simple. Introduce yourself to the audience. Tell them a little bit about your background, and what they need to know about you.
I'm an ex-intelligence. My AFSC in the Air Force was in the intelligence-related field. I worked for the Inspector General of the Air Force for a few years, but then I transferred over. Well, the Inspector General is not a full-time AFSC, so you get handpicked for that, and then you go back to your old AFSC. AFSC stands for Air Force Specialty Code. That's basically your job. And then I spent the remainder of my time in the Air Force with an intelligence-related field leading up to and past 9/11. So I have a lot of information on what took place leading up to that from a military standpoint. And after that, I worked for the government. I won't get into that at this time. And typically, actually, always after your honorable service ends, most people don't know this when they enter the Air Force, but you have 4 years of inactive reserve after you get out. So, they don't really tell you that at the recruitment center. So you finish your honorable service, and then you have 4 years inactive reserve. And that's for in case there's an emergency or something like that, war, they can activate you automatically. Now, I got out quite a while ago, so my inactive reserve status is far beyond the point, but due to the fact that there were some unforeseen circumstances that took place over the last decade, a good amount of people were called back in for certain specialty fields, not into the active duty again, but into a related field.
Thank you. And here's the thing. The reason why I'm bringing you on today is because we've known each other for quite some time, correct? We've known each other for, I guess, almost 4 years now. It seems like time has flown by here, but we started with just a simple correspondence where you'd be sharing information with me that you thought was important. You pulled a lot of information off the boards and just open source public information, and I would usually put it on the channel almost immediately after you gave it to me because I'd do the research. I'd look at it and say, okay, well, this is worth discussing. This is worth talking about. Tell us a little bit about how because a lot of the information, to me, what was validating the fact that you were, on the boards every day and monitoring it and being close to the information is we talk about things that would end up in Q posts a day or two later. So tell the audience a little bit about how that correspondence, you reached out to me and what you wanted out of that.
Well, I noticed you. I recognized your board your service when you had, I think, 400 people on it. And during that time period, I was looking for a relatively new streamer who I felt was intelligent and could get certain information out to the public that I felt was important leading up to the now 2020 election, because I felt that there would be a lot of issues during that time period. So I think you started. I think when I first sent you a message, you had about 300 to 400 people, and now it's 270,000 people later. But so I identified you as a potential good asset, and we linked up. I think I don't recall what the first message I sent you was, but it was somewhere along the lines of some information related to. I think it was more explanation based, because at the beginning of the Q drops, a lot of people were confused on how military jargon goes and certain communications. So I think that's how it started. I would need to review what the first few messages were, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And then from there, information would start to get dropped by Q, and I would do research, or I would hear something from somebody, and I would forward it to you. And we'd always be ahead of the curve by a few days, myself and you. And
Yeah, it was really,
weeks actually.
yeah, it was really incredible. Sometimes, like you said, a few weeks even where, we're talking about stuff in the emails and I would see it pop up on the Q post. And I'm like, oh, okay. But to be very clear, you are not Q.
No, I'm not. And I have nothing to do personally with the team. But, I reckon, and there's no but the only reason I say that is, the only reason I bring up but is I know the communications, I've been in the military, and it's my personal opinion that it's definitely a military ran operation, just by the way that they go about things. But obviously I have no proof on that. I'm not going to sit here and say I do, but that's just my opinion. And yeah.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that there were so many correspondences over the last 4 years since we've been talking that I can't, really pinpoint any one exactly, other than to note that the information that I put out in the channel then, would get researched, in the Anon community, and it would end up, kind of funneling back into the major news outlets, eventually. So I was always, I was just very impressed with our correspondence and how they always went. But today, tell us why you wanted to come, because to be quite frank, you never really gave me an idea of who you were, except you were like, obviously you were on the boards. I could tell that. I could tell you were monitoring 8kun, you were getting the information off it. And that, that's a hard job in and of itself to monitor that. It takes a lot of time and effort. So tell us why you're coming out today. And is it because of the election?
Yeah, this, as far as I'm concerned, at least in my lifetime, this is the most important election that I can think of. This is to put it bluntly, this is a make or break type of an election. It's easy to say that 2016 was as well, but this is a different type of one, because in 2016, everybody was kind of like, wow, that really happened. But now the president has them on their heels. And the bottom line is that the president doesn't have to run for re-election again. So in his second term, he can really go after them in a different type of way, a much more aggressive way than he did in the first term. First term was a lot more about laying the foundation to set up the second term. And I know, I'm sure your viewers, are frustrated by, when the hell is this going to happen? When's this going to happen? I get it. But I think they have to realize that these people had, at least 30 years to set up the foundation that they had, that the president had 4 years to break down. So, it was a hell of a complex that he broke down, one facet to another, to another, to another. It's just, so anyway, long story short, there's just, why am I coming out now? There's nothing else I could do at this point. The only thing I can do at this point is research information, feed information. Everything is about the voters. Everything's about the, my fellow Americans. Either they make the choice to stand up to this issue, or I think the story is going to be over pretty damn soon.
Yeah. And, like we said before, it was like, these people, like you said, 30 years to build that foundation at least, and they're running this massive criminal enterprise through our government. And President Trump has only had 4 years to kind of disassemble things. And I do believe that you're 100% correct that in a second term, he's much more free to do things that he wouldn't have normally been able to do, because he had to consider the aspect of being reelected, which, in President Trump's words, we may have 12 years of Trump after this. So, who knows?
We might, if this becomes a civil conflict. And you know what? People need to realize that is possible. If it becomes a civil conflict and he stays in office, if it goes beyond, if it goes beyond his normal 8-year period, we're not going to have a presidential election, during a civil conflict. And, I hope that doesn't happen. But the people on, our opposition right now do hope that it happens, because that's really their only hope. Their only hope is conflict, because every other thing that they've thrown on the wall has not worked.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we're here to talk about today. So let's get right into it. So talking about the 2020 election, and we see the states sending out these unsolicited ballots, and you see President Trump getting up every single day and saying they know what they're doing. They know the danger behind what they're doing. They know the damage that they're going to cause. They know the strategies. Q's alluded to this in a lot of the later posts here, that it's going to be used to steal the election. Tell us your scenario, what you see happening, and we'll start there.
Based on my research and based on the people I've talked to, I can see the president taking all the states that he took in 2016, plus Minnesota, New Hampshire, possibly Oregon, and possibly New Mexico, possibly Nevada, but those are on a different tier. Those are much lower. I think that, I mean, if I know this, then I'm sure that the DNC operatives know this as well. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind they know this. So they're going to do whatever they can to win. And mail-in voting is the easiest way to fraud, to commit fraud. I mean, who the hell could track it? Nobody can track that. And unless they individually go to each and every single person, nobody's going to ever do that. There's no way to ever know who voted for who. And so I think their first option is going to be to try to commit fraud through mail, which I also believe the president has cut off pretty well. They're going to specifically target, again, this is my opinion, they're going to specifically target Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Ohio, Michigan, New Hampshire, and maybe a few others. Minnesota, definitely. And Minnesota will probably be their easiest place to commit fraud because of who's their attorney general. But after that fails, and I do believe it will fail, they'll stall as much as they can. They'll push for conflict, and they'll use their brown shirts, their Antifa. It's actually BAM, by any means necessary, which controls Black Lives Matter and Antifa. So if you hear me or your viewers hear me say BAM throughout this, I'm referring to Black Lives Matter and Antifa, just that kind of their mother group, BAM. And so then they'll use them probably to start problems. I do believe, again, this is just personal opinion, but I do believe that they're going to try something truly heinous leading up to the election, probably on election day, in either Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, or Minnesota. And the reason I believe that is that they're going to, sorry about the dog barking, by the way.
That's all right.
They're going to try to, the first thing they're going to try to do is stall the vote as much as they can. And the best way to stall it is to completely remove it from happening altogether. And the best way to remove it from happening altogether is to create such an event that it doesn't happen. And that event would have to be pretty bad to have that happen, to have it stop altogether. My personal opinion is that if it were to happen, it would happen in Minnesota or Pennsylvania would be my likely, what I believe where it would happen. But and if that fails, if he cuts that off, then they're going to try to contest the election, and that's when we get into the secession part. They'll contest it and they'll try to ride it out. They'll probably go to the United Nations and claim that there's tyranny going on and all that crap, and try to get the United Nations to send troops in, probably to the West Coast, and that's how they'll probably start the conflict. It'll happen that way, in my opinion.
Wow. So you guys are hearing this here. I'm just kind of with you here for the ride listening, but so let's talk about that. So when you say pull something off, I mean, a lot of Anons out there have been talking about, the 10 days of darkness that Q alluded to. Would it be something like a grid attack, or do you see some sort of but it's hard to make these predictions because it would just have to be something big enough that would, you say, delay the election? Is that, you mean like in the sense that it would be like a national tragedy that would stop everything, like a 9/11 type deal, or what do you think?
My personal opinion, yes, I do believe that's what happened. And just to your viewers who watch this, I'm not trying to fearmonger, but there are patterns in everything, and the patterns with these individuals particularly is that they work in a series of events. If one event doesn't work, then they do this, and and they're it's pretty obvious how they do things because they always do it the same way. And so I do believe that they will try something probably bad, diabolical in nature. And, I hope I'm wrong. But, here's another thing to throw out there. If I know this, the president and his team know this as well. So they're going to do everything they can to, and they probably have already shut it down. As a matter of fact, to tell you the truth, I'm pretty convinced that the president's Twitter, the tweet about the plane full of thugs to the RNC, do you remember that one from a few weeks ago?
Yes, I totally remember it.
I'm pretty positive that was a message in a bottle to Anons and to people like your viewers and stuff like that. I think he was pretty much saying we pretty much stopped something bad. I mean, if you look at the way he posted that, and if you look at what was happening leading up to that, I mean, look what he mentioned. He mentioned plane, he mentioned thugs on a plane. I mean, and they stopped thugs on a plane. I mean, what would people on a plane do? And then he brought up the RNC. So, you know, the patterns with the opponent, the Maoists, just to be clear on something too, they are communist. Some of them are communist, but most of them are Maoist in nature. You know, people like to say socialist, and yeah, it's kind of socialism, but they're Maoist. They're aligned with China for the most part, and some are Marxist. Some are Marxist as well, but most of the Antifa and BLM members, they're getting paid by China. So they're
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So I've had a speculation that I've been putting out there saying, you know, when we saw the Chinese consulate in Houston shut down and they were burning all those papers, that I think there was an actual paper trail that existed that could tie their funding to Antifa and BLM. And I think when President Trump moved to shut them down, they panicked and decided that they had to get rid of the evidence. But that's just pure speculation at this point. And what else leads you to believe, though, because we know what Maoism is. I've shared videos on Twitter about this, and I think I've talked about it on the channel many times. If you look at the way that Chairman Mao went through and basically purged society of the landlords and basically weaponized the youth to go out and round up the people who are the businessmen, capitalists, the bourgeois, and to shame them and publicly disgrace them and publicly torture them and all types of awful things. It's almost very similar to, you know, if you're in Portland and you're in and you have a business and your whole block gets shut down by CHOP, and they're the Red Guard. So tell us a little bit more about what you see their connection to China as being, besides what we just talked about, and, you know, how they've been, you know, basically activated against the American population.
China likes to handle business in a much more covert way, and in doing this, they created something called the Copernicus Institute. Have you heard of this? The Copernicus.
No, I have
Institute?
not.
Well, in short, in very short, because I could go on with this one for a while.
I've heard of Confucius Institute, but I've never heard of Copernicus.
Right, that's a wing of it as well.
Okay.
But basically, they're the same thing. One is in Europe. One is anyway. They infiltrate the universities and they go from there, and that's a major thing. And the tech majors in the university is a very big focus of theirs as well. So you know, they'll get into those places, the university, the tech majors, and then from there they'll be able to implement a spying tech on the college, and they'll be able to know what's coming and going, and they'll be able to shut down from there certain free speech events. They'll be able to form a counter for those free speech events. And when I say free speech events, I'm talking about, you know, the college GOP, college conservatives. Actually, I shouldn't even say that. Any pro-America rhetoric, because it's not just, at this point, it's not just conservative Republican. It's any pro-America rhetoric is what they're going to go after. And so anyway, long story short, they go into these places, and the universities, they'll put spies, they'll implement spies in there, and then they'll be able to know when the specific protests or gatherings and such are going to go on. Sometimes people will just disappear. You know, if they feel that an individual is a threat to them or is saying too much bad about them, this is especially prevalent with the Copernicus in Europe. They'll just remove the person altogether. And this is also very prevalent when it comes to Chinese dissidents, people who leave the country. But they target individuals mostly as far as who they try to bring on board. They target individuals who are disenfranchised, to very often people of color, because they feel that it's much easier to target a person of color. You know, you can easily use that. This is from their perspective. They can use that to their advantage to try to start a rift between different groups and races. And they are directly connected to BAM by any means necessary. And BAM is, you know, like I said, directly connected to Antifa and Black Lives Matter. And BAM is so the way I understand it, the way it used to be at least. BAM's been around for a long time, just to be clear. BAM started in Michigan, and they took over the entire Detroit area to Ann Arbor, to I think Dearborn. And then they moved out to Oakland. They have a horrible background. If your viewers ever want to look into something, even worse than Antifa and Black Lives Matter. They should look into BAM, because BAM is very bad. And that's where Yvette Falarka and all those idiots are connected to. But I got off track there a little bit. Sorry. But
yeah, you were saying like the Copernicus Institute and how they're disappearing people, the people who are standing up for free speech in America. So let's kind of move forward, because I think a lot of the audience out there understand. Let's talk about going into this election, right? What can we do to get the word out, and what do we need to know to get the word out in an informed way? Not, no pun intended, obviously, just informed talk. But you know, tell the audience out there what they need to know ahead of this election, what they need to know about getting the vote out, and kind of the urgency of this situation.
The urgency is very high. I mean, anybody with even a moderate intellect can see, that the Democrats, the left in a way, has given us a major gift by showing us their hand. I mean, they have said everything that they want to do: open borders, destroy, get rid of the police, free college for everybody, no income, or not a universal income. Sorry. I mean, they have definitely made it known what they want, and if they get power, they're going to do it. Green New Deal type stuff. The up and coming younger leftists are even worse than the older ones. But so if Trump doesn't win, I mean, they're going to control. Biden will not be the president. I mean, if he were to be elected, he would only be in there for maybe a year. And so basically, this is Trump against Harris. And anybody who's watched Harris or knows what she did in California should take that as a very serious warning of what she would do as POTUS. But here's the bigger thing. 2016 took them by surprise. They weren't expecting it. Now they expect it. And they will never, if they get power, they will never allow 2016 to happen again. They will fill the blank. They will fill the gaps that caused 16 to happen. They'll get rid of streamers like you. You won't be able to stream. They'll get rid of 4chan. They'll get rid of 8kun. Every single free speech type site to organize and discuss things, it's gone if they get back in. There is, I mean, look at social media has also tipped their hand on that. Look at how much they've gotten rid of stuff. So if she gets in, there's not going to be any way people can contact or coordinate to get things done. So this is a very important election. This is probably, in my opinion, at least in the last 150 years, this is the most important election. And I don't see another election that was more important than this. I mean, it's pro-America versus anti-America. There's no Democrat versus Republican. It's you love the country or you want the country to go up in flames. That's really what it comes down to at this point. If they win, it's going to go up in flames. They have made that abundantly clear. And, if our side wins, if the pro-America side wins, then, well, we'll bring in a lot of them. I can pretty much guarantee that. A lot of the people that have been causing trouble, a lot of them are going to go away. You never hear about them again. But, we got into this position we are today because people who were before us, they weren't paying attention. So these people, these types of people, they'll always try to come back again. This happened in the 60s and 70s, and it's happening again now. It's worse now than it was in the 60s or 70s. But this is a very important election. And what people can do, they need to get the word out. The average person is not going to understand QAnon. When a viewer goes out and talks about stuff, the average person is not going to know, and the Q researcher is not really going to know. I mean, where would they begin? So I think the best way to go about it is just seed things to your not to your viewers, but to people in your life. And I'm talking to the viewers directly. Seed things such as, hey, Harris said this about open borders, or you should look at this. And, oh, QAnon said this about this. Slip it in there. Don't come right out and say, oh, yeah, Q did this and did that, because that's what the media wants. You have to, use your research. But with fact, you have to use the fact. The Democrats have already given us the entire blueprint. So the best thing to do is get that word out there. Me personally, I live in an area where there's a lot of leftists, and they're not leftists anymore. I'm serious. They have really gone away from that party ever since they've seen what the party has done. So I'm assuming that it's going to be the same in every other area, your viewers as well.
Yeah, I don't think that they even stand remotely a chance at taking this election without the mail-in voting fraud. And because I do think there's a movement of people that don't even talk about it, who are probably Democrats and leftists who know they're going to vote for Trump because they understand what's going on. But like you said, what's really important is to reach out to your friends and family, those that aren't going to vote for Trump, or you think they're on the fence or whatever, and just start telling them the objective facts around the like you said, open borders, like about the removal of law and order in society, that what defunding the cops really does. I mean, show them a clip of Portland and say, that's not a QAnon conspiracy theory. That's armed vigilante thugs committing hate crimes and extorting businesses like a bunch of mobsters. And you got to call it out for what it is. So tell us about this, though. There was an article that came out, and I believe it came out through the Washington Post, of course, the fake news liars they are. But it had some truth in it, because I'm reading off a headline from Breitbart here about the article where it talked about Democrats' war game for election includes West Coast secession and possible civil war. And I want to read this quote to you, and then I want to get your comment on it. But here's a quote directly from that Washington Post article where it says, but conveniently, a group of former top government officials called the Transition Integrity Project actually gamed 4 possible scenarios, including one that doesn't look that different from 2016. A big popular win for Mr. Biden and a narrow electoral defeat, presumably reached after weeks of counting the votes in Pennsylvania for their war game. They cast John Podesta, who was Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, in the role of Mr. Biden. They expected him, when the votes came in, to concede, just as Mrs. Clinton had done. But Mr. Podesta, playing Mr. Biden, shocked the organizers by saying he felt his party wouldn't let him concede, alleging voter suppression. He persuaded the governors of Wisconsin and Michigan to send pro-Biden electors to the Electoral College. In that scenario, California, Oregon, and Washington then threatened to secede from the United States if Mr. Trump took office as planned. The House named Mr. Biden president, and the Senate and White House stuck with Mr. Trump. At that point in the scenario, the nation stopped looking to the media for cues and waited to see what the military would do. Now, that's the whole quote there. But I think we need to explain to people the reality of what a state threatening to secede from the union would be like. Because, for instance, I live in California, and if there's a high probability that they would probably engage in this kind of thing. And what could that mean in real terms for people who live in these blue states? I mean, what planning can they do? How can they prepare? Because this is a possibility, even if President Trump wins the election.
Yeah, it's I think that when and if, more so when the president wins the election, the blue states, especially Washington, Oregon, and California, need to expect that. They need to expect a very high propensity for, the writing's just on the wall in those states. And what could they do to prepare? In a situation like that, home ownership, as far as home pricing goes down, your citizenship, the person will be not even know what what country they belong to. Most importantly, this is planned. Those specific states are planned. The West Coast is planned. It opens up a beachhead for China. And that was the plan all along. And I guarantee that if that were to happen, they would be funneling Chinese troops in to the West Coast as well. I think that people need to take it seriously, and I think that the first thing they need to do is they need to prepare. Just to be clear, I'm not one of those prepper people, but I'm not one of those people, with an underground bunker and stuff. But sometimes you have to logically analyze issues, and given what those states have shown the propensity to do, you have to prepare for stuff like that. And that includes, the essentials, food, canned food, normal food, bottled water, definitely soap. Cleanliness kills more people in situations like that than hunger. So make sure that you always stay clean in situations like that. Means to protect yourself, obviously. And if you have family in other areas, and if you see that writing on the wall, I would suggest getting out, because those 3 states are going to become a serious battleground if that were to happen. If that were to happen, there is absolutely no way the United States would allow that big of a beachhead. They would never allow any coastal area to secede. Never. It would never happen. So people need to be aware of that. And that's serious. If there is no way the U.S. would ever allow that to happen. So, if that were to happen, if people live in those areas and see that coming, they need to get the hell out of Dodge. And if they have a family to take care of, if they have a family to take care of, they need to.
Here's the thing. Like you said, it's not about fear mongering here. If they're talking about country or states seceding, right? And they're in their game, they're in their war games, and you hear a guy like John Podesta, who we know what he's done, right? We've covered that. We know what Hillary Clinton's been involved with. We've talked about Epstein Island. We've talked about the things that go on there. And if they're talking seriously about this stuff, I do know that they would send in the army and that there would be a battle for that territory. It wouldn't be just left to whoever wants it.
Absolutely.
So I think
zero chance that happens.
Yeah. So I think that what people need to do is, like you said, they need to prepare food, water, stock up on gasoline. So if you have to get out, you can stock up on, obviously guns and other things so that you can protect yourself and your family. That is legal by the Second Amendment, obviously, is what I'm talking about here. So, and look, I hate to do this because we're not trying to scare you guys out there, but would you rather be prepared or would you rather be caught off guard? That's the way I always look at it.
And that's absolutely correct. I mean, somebody might say, "Oh, yeah, you're taking this." No, I mean, there's a difference between making sure you're prepared in a very serious situation when the writing's on the wall. There's a big difference between that and somebody who just is always paranoid about something. This is a very serious situation. I mean, these people, and the people have shown that it's a very serious situation. And you hit the nail on the head when you said there is no reason that Podesta or they would even have a war planning, a transition team, unless they were seriously planning on doing it. That is one of their plans. So, my opinion, they would not be practicing that. They would not be preparing for that. There would be no purpose for it. In the military, I don't know if people know this, but we have a strategic plan for every single country on the planet. Every single one. I mean, everyone. And each of them have different designations. Typically, they're designated with a color, and not always. But you don't plan for issues like this unless you're planning for the potential contingency of that issue happening. So they're planning for it because they're planning that it potentially is going to happen. And people need to take that seriously, especially with Podesta in there. I mean, Podesta, with him in there, people need to take that seriously. And, people have to do what they have to do, but I would definitely suggest that. And your viewers, you don't know me, you have no reason to trust me, but think about it logically. Look at the patterns of the way that these people have gone about business. And if you do that, I think that it will be obvious to you that is one of their plans. Now, is that their first plan? I don't know. I think that's their last resort plan. I mean, that's just my opinion, but it might come to that. It might come to that.
Well, and for me in this channel, we're a Christian channel, and we pray and we put our faith in God and Jesus Christ, and we hope that our country will make it through this, and we trust that no matter what, God will be with us. But that doesn't mean you don't prepare. That doesn't mean you stick your head in the sand. That doesn't mean that you pretend that it's not happening. You take what they tell you seriously. As I said, I gave you a direct quote from an article that was published with the biggest newspaper in the country, the Washington Post, right? So, you can take it and make of it what you will. I think you were just explaining the contingency of what would happen. Like, the military's reaction would have to be serious enough to say, we're not going to cede that much territory, especially when, there are people in California who don't want to leave, who don't want to secede, who are going to be unwillingly a part of whatever's happening. So that, I think, is very important. Yeah. And so,
but if that happens, I mean, consider it logically. What could those people do? I mean, it would become, if the state of California decided to do that, the president would not be able to just automatically throw in them. There would have to be a planning phase. I'm sure that they're planning for it right now, but there would need to be discussion about it. They would first try to, handle the issue diplomatically, come back to the state or else type thing. But during that time period, those people would be in California and they wouldn't be part of the United States anymore. So they need to be ready for that. I mean, it's a serious issue. I mean, it's unbelievable. The people who are in charge of those states, they should be charged with treason. I mean, they should be charged with treason.
And think about it. I mean, if you saw there was no toilet paper at Costco after, you know, a little cold comes out, wait till, you know, there's a literal, you know, secession of the state. I mean, you think that they're going to cut supply lines, they're going to do things that are going to be very dangerous to the public at large if it came down to that. So that's why we have to be aware of it. That's why we have to be prepared for it. And that's why I brought you on today, because I was like, look, I'd rather talk to people openly about it, because we still have this little thing called free speech in this country where we can discuss these things and openly and publicly, and the possibility and how to save our republic. So I really appreciate you coming on here today. And so let's kind of wrap it up here with, you know, your final thoughts and what your final parting message is. And we hope we'll have you on here again, the show soon, but tell the people out there what they need to know otherwise.
Well, you know, on a personal note, you know, I didn't get really too much into myself and into my background, and I won't, but I will say that I bleed red, white, and blue. I mean, like, I am very pro-America, and I care about, I have a point to this, just bear with me. I care about all my fellow Americans, be they leftists or rightists, or, you know, I don't care. I don't care what side a person is. I care about my fellow Americans, and I want them to be safe. And I've always done that. I've always wanted that. That's why I joined the military. That's why I joined the government after that. And that's why I've done what I've done my whole life. My point is that we're in this together. This is, you know, petty squabbles about, oh, this person said this, or this person thinks this, or whatever. They don't mean anything right now. One side, all that matters is one side wants to destroy everything. They want to destroy it. They want to take it away. They want to completely get rid of it. And the other side wants to be able to still respect and still care about and still hope the best and work with their fellow Americans. Now, I know you have, I know you have viewers that are in other Western countries, England, et cetera. And I feel the same way about you. I mean, we're in this together against a very ancient, if I ever come back on, we can get into that, a very ancient situation that has been wrecking society for a long time.
Well,
And,
I mean, the Bible does say good and evil. It's been a battle that's gone on well before we were here. So, and it will go on long into the future. But yeah, go on.
And good doesn't always win. And that's something that I think people need to realize, is that good doesn't always win. And
at least not here in this life, in this realm. But we know as Christians that in the next existence that we have that eternal salvation. So yeah, sorry, I had to interject that.
No, it's okay. I'm speaking specifically about our history, mankind's history, honor. You know, we don't, you know, good, sometimes evil wins, you know, and they take control of something, and it gets even more evil. So it really, and you know, looking back on those, I'm a big history buff. If the people would have bound together and came together in these situations, they could have stopped it before it started. And that's really what's going on here too. The president does care about the people. The president cares immensely about the country and the people. The modern they want to just wreck it all, like I said. So I think it's really important for people to realize, to see the patterns, to see the writing on the wall with what's going on, and keep paying attention to shows like yours, and you know, participate in these things. There's no reason not to. It's enjoyable to do. At the very least, it's enjoyable to talk to like-minded Americans.
And keep red pilling your friends and family, and keep telling them about the truth of the situation, and get out there and vote, and get them to go vote, and make sure they're voting for President Trump. And that's all we can really do, you know, I mean, and pray and keep calling it out for what it is, exposing this evil and the treachery. But we could probably go on for hours, since we've known each other for so long, and we've had so many correspondences. And like you said, you know, there's other threads that we can go down, and we will do that in the future, I promise. And if you guys want to see him come back on the show, please leave a comment down in the comment section. But other than that, I want to thank you, Chris, for coming on the show, and it was such a pleasure, and we'll definitely do this again in the near future. And I guess there's nothing for you to give as far as social media or anything, because you're kind of an anon in the truest sense of it. So
yeah, story of my life, my friend.
Well, keep it up. I'm glad that we could get you on here. It was really a pleasure. So thank you, and have a great evening.
Yeah, take care. God bless America.